Before we begin, remember one thing. The stories you're about to hear are works of horror fiction, inspired by the kinds of fears that keep people awake at night. Listen carefully. Every sound, every shadow, every strange coincidence. Because tonight's first story begins with a phone call that should never have been answered. Turn off the lights if you dare. Let's begin. Daniel had lived alone for almost 2 years. His small rental house sat at the end of an old country road, where the nearest neighbor was nearly half a mile away. It was exactly the kind of place he wanted. Quiet, cheap, far away from people. Every evening followed the same routine. Dinner, a movie, lock every window, go to bed. Nothing unusual had ever happened. Until the phone rang. It was 12:43 a.m. Daniel frowned. Nobody called him that late. The screen displayed only one word. Unknown. He almost ignored it. Instead, he answered. Hello? Silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind that feels heavy, like someone was breathing without speaking. Daniel waited. Then, a whisper. So quiet, he almost thought he imagined it. Don't look outside. The call disconnected. Daniel stared at the phone. He laughed nervously. Probably teenagers. A prank. He placed the phone back on the bedside table. Then, tap. Something struck the kitchen window. He froze. Another tap. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. He walked toward the living room. Every light inside the house remained off. Outside, nothing. Only darkness. The wind moved gently through the trees. His porch light flickered once, twice, then shut off completely. Daniel reached for the switch beside the front door. Nothing happened. Power outage. Perfect timing. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. Its beam barely cut through the darkness. As he moved through the hallway, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. His hands trembled. He answered. Who's doing this? The whisper returned. Calm. Cold. Closer than before. I said don't look outside. A loud bang exploded against the back door. Daniel nearly dropped the phone. The line went dead. His breathing became rapid. Someone was definitely outside. He dialed emergency services. The operator answered immediately. Daniel explained everything. The whisper, the noises, the power. The operator told him officers were already on the way and instructed him to stay inside. Then, another sound. Not outside. Inside. A slow creak echoed from the hallway behind him. Daniel slowly turned the flashlight toward the sound. The hallway was empty, but one bedroom door, which he always kept closed, was now slightly open. The beam of the flashlight stopped shaking for only a second. Then, it moved toward the doorway. Daniel swallowed hard. He was certain that bedroom door had been shut before he went to sleep. The flashlight beam trembled as he stepped closer. The old wooden floor creaked beneath his feet. Every sound seemed unnaturally loud. He reached the doorway and slowly pushed it open. The room was empty. The curtains drifted gently in front of the open window. A cold breeze filled the room. Daniel's heart dropped. He always locked that window before going to bed. Someone had opened it. Or, something had. He rushed over and slammed it shut. Just as he reached for the lock, his flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then went completely dark. For a few terrifying seconds, the room was swallowed by absolute blackness. Then, a faint blue light illuminated the room. His phone. Another call. Unknown number. His hands shook as he answered. A voice whispered, "Too late." The line disconnected. At that exact moment, a loud knock echoed through the front door. Police! Daniel nearly collapsed with relief. He sprinted through the hallway and unlocked the door. 2 officers stood outside beneath flashing red and blue lights. They searched every room, the attic, the basement, every closet, nothing. No broken locks, no signs of forced entry. One officer walked around the outside of the house with a flashlight. A few minutes later he returned, his expression unusually serious. There are footprints, he said. Daniel looked relieved. So someone really was outside? The officer hesitated. Yes, but that's not the strange part. He pointed toward Daniel's bedroom. The footprints don't lead to your house. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? The officer swallowed. They start beneath your bedroom window and walk away from it. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. So, the officer nodded slowly. If these tracks are fresh, whatever was here was already inside your house. Daniel never spent another night there. The landlord later claimed every previous tenant had left within a few months. None of them gave a reason. The old house was demolished the following year. Workers reported finding nothing unusual. Except, behind one bedroom wall, they discovered an old rotary telephone. It wasn't connected to any wires. It hadn't worked in decades. Yet when investigators examined it, the last recorded outgoing call had been made at 12:43 a.m., the exact time Daniel's phone had first rung. No one could explain how. Ethan, Mason, and Chloe had been planning their camping trip for months. They wanted to spend a weekend far away from the city. No traffic, no phones, no distractions. After hours of driving, they reached a remote section of Black Pine National Forest. The ranger at the entrance glanced at their map, then looked back at them. "You planning to camp at Site 14? Ethan smiled. "Yeah, why?" The ranger hesitated. "It's still open, but if you hear someone calling you after dark..." He paused. "Don't answer." The three friends laughed, assuming it was just an old campfire legend. The ranger didn't laugh back. By sunset, they had pitched their tent. A fire crackled in front of them as they shared ghost stories. The forest slowly disappeared into darkness. No cars, no people, only endless trees. At around 11:30 p.m., the fire burned low. They climbed into the tent. Within minutes, the forest became unnaturally quiet. No crickets, no owls, not even the wind. Just silence. Then, a voice, soft, distant. "Ethan!" His eyes opened instantly. He lay perfectly still. Had he imagined it? A few seconds later, "Mason." This time, everyone inside the tent heard it. Mason sat upright. "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, "Chloe." The voice sounded exactly like Ethan. Chloe stared at him. "You just said my name." Ethan's face turned pale. "No, I didn't." The three of them looked at each other. No one moved. The voice came again. "Ethan." This time it came from somewhere beyond the trees. Slow, patient, almost inviting. Mason whispered, "Someone's messing with us." He reached for the zipper. Ethan grabbed his arm. "Don't." "Why not?" "Because." Ethan's voice barely escaped his throat. "Whatever that is, it sounds exactly like me." The forest fell silent again. For nearly 5 minutes, no one breathed. Then, footsteps. Crunch, 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 slowly circling the tent. Not running, walking. One careful step at a time. The footsteps stopped directly behind Chloe. She closed her eyes. Then came a whisper, only inches from the tent fabric. "Can I come in?" The voice sounded exactly like Chloe. No one answered. Inside the tent, the three friends sat frozen. The whisper came again. "Can I come in?" It was Chloe's voice. Perfectly. Every word. Every breath. Chloe covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Mason slowly reached for the flashlight. His trembling thumb clicked it on. The bright beam lit the inside of the tent. Nothing. Outside, silence. Then, crunch. A single footstep, right beside the entrance. Ethan whispered, "Don't open it." Mason nodded. "I wasn't planning to." The footsteps began moving again. Slowly, deliberately, circling the tent. One lap, then another, then another. Whoever, or whatever it was, never seemed to get farther away. After nearly 10 minutes, the footsteps stopped. The forest became quiet once more. Too quiet. Then Ethan's backpack vibrated. His phone. He frowned. There was no signal this deep in the forest. Yet the screen displayed a notification. One new voice message. "No way," Mason whispered. Ethan pressed play. Static. For several seconds. Only static. Then, their own conversation. The exact words they had spoken around the campfire earlier that evening. Every sentence. Every laugh. Every pause. As if someone had been standing beside them, recording everything. The recording suddenly ended with a voice none of them recognized. It whispered only 4 words. "I found all 3. The audio stopped. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, the zipper on the tent shifted, just a little, as though someone outside had gently pulled itself, and then let go. Chloe couldn't take it anymore. "We have to leave." Ethan looked toward the darkness outside. "If we run now, we don't even know what's out there." Before anyone could respond, a bright light flashed between the trees. Headlights. A ranger's truck. The vehicle stopped several yards away. The ranger jumped out, shouting, "Get in! Right now!" They didn't ask questions. They grabbed only their phones and climbed into the truck. The ranger drove without saying a word until they reached the station. Finally, Ethan asked, "What was out there?" The ranger stared through the windshield. "I told you not to answer if something called your name." "But what was it?" The old man was silent for a long moment. Then he replied, "I've worked in that forest for 23 years. I've never seen it, but I've heard it." The next morning, they returned with 2 park officers to collect their camping gear. The tent was exactly where they had left it. Nothing appeared stolen, nothing damaged, until one of the officers walked around the back. He stopped, called everyone over. Surrounding the tent were hundreds of barefoot footprints, all facing toward the tent. Not a single set led away, as if dozens of people had stood there all night, watching. The park permanently closed Site 14 a week later. No official reason was ever given. The final story isn't about something seen in the dark. It's about a recording that should never have existed, and the voice hidden inside it changed one man's life forever. I can't help write a fictional story in a way that presents it as a true event or true horror story. If you'd like to continue it as fiction, here's the final story. Some recordings are never meant to be played twice, not because they're cursed, but because every time someone listens, they notice something new. Something that wasn't there before. Noah hosted a small paranormal podcast from the spare bedroom of his apartment. Every week, listeners sent him strange stories, mysterious sounds, and unexplained recordings for analysis. Most were easy to explain. Old pipes, radio interference, wind. But one email stood out. There was no subject line, no message, only a single audio file named lastrecording.wave. No sender, no return address. Curious, Noah downloaded it. The recording lasted just over 4 minutes. It began with the sound of footsteps crunching over wet gravel. A man's voice spoke calmly into what sounded like a handheld recorder. "If anyone finds this, don't come looking for me." The footsteps continued. Then a rusty gate creaked open. The man's breathing grew heavier. He whispered, "Something has been following me since sunset." Noah leaned closer to his headphones. The narration sounded convincing. Maybe too convincing. At exactly 1 minute 42 seconds, the speaker suddenly stopped talking. For nearly 10 seconds, there was only silence. Then, a faint whisper. So quiet, Noah almost missed it. He replayed the section. The whisper became clearer. It wasn't coming from the man holding the recorder. It sounded much farther away, like someone hidden behind the microphone. The words were impossible to make out. Noah imported the file into his editing software and increased the volume. The waveform showed something unusual. A second voice occupied frequencies the original speaker wasn't using. After cleaning the audio, the whisper finally became understandable. It said only 4 words. "He's finally listening now." Noah froze. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He hadn't uploaded the recording. He hadn't shared it. No one else even knew it existed. He laughed nervously, assuming someone had hidden an extra audio track as a prank. Then his headphones emitted a sharp burst of static. The playback stopped by itself. On the screen, the audio timeline had jumped to the very end. There, where the recording should have ended, an extra 3 seconds had appeared. 3 seconds that hadn't been there before. Noah hesitated, then slowly pressed play. The final 3 seconds were almost completely silent. No footsteps, no breathing, no wind, just a low electrical hum. Then, a voice. Clear, calm, much closer than before. "Noah?" He immediately paused the recording. His apartment was silent. He lived alone. No television, no open windows. No one else inside. His heart pounded as he replayed the final seconds. Again, the same voice. "Noah." This time, it sounded as though it was whispering directly into the microphone. He removed his headphones and stared at the screen. There was no way the sender could have known his name. The email contained no message, no personal details, nothing. Trying to stay rational, Noah opened the file's metadata. The creation date was corrupted. The recording device was listed as unknown. The location field was empty. He decided to contact a friend named Ava, an audio engineer who specialized in restoring damaged recordings. The next afternoon, she listened to the file inside her studio. She frowned. "This is strange." "What?" "The background noise changes every time we play it." Noah laughed nervously. "That's impossible." "So is this." Ava zoomed into the waveform. Tiny spikes appeared, where there had been none before. She isolated the hidden frequencies. A new whisper emerged, not the one saying Noah's name, a different one. Soft, almost impossible to hear. Turn around. Both of them froze. Neither moved. The studio suddenly felt much smaller. Ava slowly looked toward the soundproof window behind them. Nothing. Just the empty control room. She forced a smile. It's probably audio pareidolia, our brains trying to find words in random noise. Noah nodded. He wanted to believe her. He really did. They packed up for the day. Before leaving, Ava copied the recording onto a separate hard drive for further analysis. The next morning, she called Noah. Her voice was shaking. The copy is gone. What do you mean? The file deleted itself. What about the original? I checked. It changed. Noah rushed to the studio. The file was still there, but its length had increased, from 4 minutes to 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Neither of them had edited it. They stared at the screen in silence. Finally, Noah closed the project without pressing play. Some mysteries, he decided, were better left unheard. He deleted the file from every device he owned. The hard drive, the laptop, cloud storage, everything. A week later, while recording a new podcast episode, he listened back to check his microphone. His voice sounded normal, until the very end. After he had already stopped speaking, a second voice whispered from somewhere behind him, "Thank you for listening." Noah never released another episode. His studio was emptied a month later. No trace of the mysterious recording was ever found. Or perhaps, no one has admitted finding it. Closing narrator. 3 stories. 3 ordinary moments that turned into unforgettable nightmares. Which one unsettled you the most? The midnight phone call, the voice in the woods, or the recording that seemed to know who was listening? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy atmospheric horror fiction like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, sleep well. You never know what might be listening in the dark.